now we go to New Orleans, just outside of Yulman Stadium, the site of one of the biggest games in Week 11 as UCF goes to take on one loss to Tulane. We welcome in Josh Pate, host of Late Kick with Josh Pate. Josh, let's start with sort of where Tulane is and where this program was a year ago, because the consistency that Willie Fritz had established there, bowl season, you had kind of felt like the Green Wave had found their place. And then last year, a hurricane comes through, they get displaced, defense falls apart, they fall to 2-10. What has been the secret to picking the program up from where they were last year and reaching this high point here in November?
Chip, you remember Penn State, how they were on a steady climb, and then the COVID year happened for Penn State. And afterwards, we wanted to write off that 2020 struggle year as, well, that was just Penn State's COVID year. I was on board with that, by the way, so I was echoing that sentiment. Around this program, this Tulane program, here in the shadow of Yulman Stadium, mind you, it kind of feels like their own privatized version of that was 2021. Because they got displaced. Everything about their normal got turned upside down. It's just that it wasn't a global pandemic that was doing it so much as it was a natural disaster that did it. And that's all they talk about here. It's not an excuse, mind you. They don't make excuses at all, but they say, people are asking how we got the ship righted this year. We believe we were on the right trajectory before forces outside our control happened to our program. So, internally, they think they were already trending towards this season. Maybe it just comes a year later than they wanted it to, but they don't really paint the picture of there being some secret sauce here. It's just we're kind of finally back to normal, and this is what they think normal will be for Tulane moving forward.
Yeah, it's easy to say like Tulane kind of came out of nowhere after having a disaster season last year, both natural and in the win-loss column. But if you've paid attention to Willie Fritz's career as a head coach, it really shouldn't come as much of a surprise that Tulane is having the season he's had, because this is a coach who, even before he got to the FCS or FBS level, had success running college football programs, and he's had success at every single level he's been. And we've seen time and time again, when coaches are having success, whether it's at D3, FCS, or in the FBS, it carries over. They've shown that they know how to build winning college football programs. We see it right now at Kansas with Lance Leipold. And Fritz is somebody who, after having plenty of success at Georgia Southern, took this Tulane job. And while it's taken a little longer than obviously he probably had hoped, the fact that the Green Wave are having this season and they find themselves in a position this weekend playing a huge game against UCF in which they've got a possible New Year's Six bowl berth on the line if they win this game to help stay alive in the American Athletic Conference and competing for a conference title. This is exactly what Willie Fritz had in mind. This is what Tulane had in mind when they hired him. This was the goal to begin with.
And this is one of the biggest matchups that Tulane's going to have on campus in a long, long time. The stakes are so high for this program in terms of what they can achieve. Let's go into the strength on strength aspect of this matchup, because we have a UCF offense that is currently leading the American Athletic Conference in terms of what it's been able to produce on a game-by-game basis, even near the top on a play-by-play basis. And we've got a Tulane defense that has been outstanding, one of the best in the conference, but also, one of the better nationally as well. So, Josh, as we go inside the matchup here and we take a look at what it's going to look like for UCF's offense, and we've got questions at the quarterback position. I don't know if you've got any insight here as we are coming live on CBS Sports HQ, but questions at the quarterback position, but the productivity has remained pretty strong with both John Reese Plumlee and Mikey Keene. Tulane's had an extra week to prepare for this. For UCF offense, Tulane defense, what do you think are some of the keys to that matchup?
Well, Chip, as you well know, Tom, you too, because you've watched Gus Malzahn, anytime you get inside information from Central Florida, you got to talk like this right here. You got to cover your mouth because we can't let anyone read lips. So here's what I do know. What I do know is nobody has the slightest clue who's going to play quarterback here tomorrow. But what I do think, at least, and this is where we delve into the realm of opinion, I think the mobility of Plumlee, all kidding aside, is really important here because if you look at both of these secondaries, neither one of them gives up a ton of big plays. And for that matter, I think it's evenly contested, but if you go tit for tat and you look at the production of Keenan, you look at the production of Plumlee, yeah, the production's there, but it's also a styles make fight sort of thing. And I really think the more you dive into it, the mobility, if you do have Plumlee in there, boy, it adds such a different dimension here. And especially on third down, I think tomorrow, it adds a much different dimension. It's not an unwinnable game if he can't go by any stretch, but I do think that dynamic certainly is what gives Central Florida the best shot. I certainly think Tulane's looking across the field, and they wouldn't mind at all if he took one more week to get healthy.
Yeah, I do think Plumlee's health is going to be a key situation for this game. If he plays, it really changes what UCF can do. And frankly, it allows UCF to do what it wants to do and what it's been built to do all season long. But this is a very good defense that they will be going against. Chip, you mentioned it. Whether you look at the basic stats, the advanced stats, nationally, this Tulane defense ranks up very well in every single category. And what they do is they don't overwhelm you. They're not causing a lot of chaos, but they do not give up explosive plays. They force you to put together long, sustained drives without making mistakes, put you in third and longs, and get off the field. And that is the one thing that is going to be interesting to see in this matchup against UCF, which is an offense that is kind of built on explosive plays. So that is going to be the one thing we need to keep our eye on when these teams are on the field. If Tulane can keep UCF from getting long runs in the run game or long passes in the pass game, they're probably going to win this game. If they can't, UCF's going to win the game.
So, like, we're going to cover our mouths if we're talking about Gus Malzahn, but, like, what if we're praising the guy? Like, what if we're coming out here and just pointing out a couple of numbers, like 16-6 being Gus Malzahn's record at UCF and 9-13 being Auburn's record since he left? Like, Gus Malzahn, having taken this job, had to know that the ceiling at UCF was going to be very high, and now the Knights are back into a place where they've wanted to be, which is competing for conference championships and opportunities for New Year's Six bowls, you know, big-time bowl positions. What has Gus Malzahn done with this program that has really impressed you? Tom, why don't you go ahead and go first on this one?
I mean, I think he stepped into a very good situation in that he's at a program that, while it hasn't been a Power 5 program in its history, will soon be a Power 5 program when it joins the Big 12 and has been behaving as a Power 5 program for years. This is a school that had an intent to build a solid football program, and it put the resources behind doing so. So even after Scott Frost, who led them to that undefeated season, left to take the Nebraska job, they bring in Josh Heupel, and it's still business as usual. A similar offense. They're still competing. Heupel leaves to go get Tennessee, and they don't look for another up-and-coming coach. They find the guy that they know can compete to win and help them in a Power 5 conference when they get there. They go get Gus Malzahn, who clearly Auburn spent a lot of money to get rid of, and they're probably regretting that to an extent, considering the wins and losses and the checks they had to cut to get those losses since losing him. But he's come in. He knows how to build a winning program. This is a guy who got Auburn to a national title game, and he's at a program in Orlando that wants to win in an area filled with a lot of talent that, frankly, just fits what Gus Malzahn is trying to do. So when you put his recruiting chops with his offense, with the talent in that area that they could bring into the program, it's going to work, and we're seeing it right now.
Can we please just, everything Tom just said is right, so I'm not going to repeat that. Let me build off of it. Can we please appreciate the lineage of Gus Malzahn here for a second? If we were to bring an agnostic fan into the fold here, they like football, but they've never watched college football. This story in 30 seconds sounds a little something like this. This dude was up against it. He was all but out the door in 2017. Kirby Smart and Nick Saban are at Georgia and Bama, respectively. They were both ranked number 1 in 2017. He beat both of them. The week of the SEC championship game, he and his agent hold Auburn up against the wall. They leverage Arkansas against Auburn. They get him a new deal with this massive buyout. A couple of years later, because it's what Auburn does, they fire him. So he's living the buyout life. Then a cush job in Orlando opens up, and he takes it. And then 5 minutes later, they tell him, hey, guess what? You're going back to the Power 5 anyway, because Central Florida is going to be a Power 5 team. Oh, by the way, he's winning again. That's the Gus Malzahn story. There's never a convenient firing except this dude. This dude got conveniently fired from the toughest job in America and has now landed here and is getting 2 universities to pay him to coach. Amazing
path for Gus Malzahn that has led him to this, one of the biggest games of the weekend in Week 11. Well, for much more with Josh Pate, and he will be joining us here in just a little bit to pick this game. You can get it Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays. It is the Late Kick with Josh Pate. Catch it 8 p.m. live at YouTube or on Facebook. Back here on the Cover 3 Takeover here on CBS Sports HQ. Tom Fornelli, Josh Pate, Barrett Sallee joining the fold as well. Time to make some picks with one of the biggest games of Week 11. It is UCF at Tulane. Now, this betting line, it's been dancing all through the week. Tulane opens up as about a 2-point favorite. then just sort of like a slow waltz all the way across the bridge. UCF favored by 1, and now as we are picking this right now, it is Tulane -1. I think that is very interesting as we do have uncertainty around the quarterback position for UCF. Also kind of shows you how much of a coin flip this game is. Tom, I'll let you go ahead and attack this one first. What is your play in this game?
Yeah, you mentioned the uncertainty surrounding the quarterback position at UCF. We don't know if John Reese Plumlee is going to be starting. Hopefully we'll have Josh getting some inside info, or at least spying on UCF this week tonight, and give us the info before the game kicks off tomorrow to let us know. But I'm banking more on UCF here. Like you said, Chip, this game is kind of a coin flip. So when it's UCF -1, I'd probably take Tulane. Now that it's UCF +1, give me UCF. I'll just take that point. When I look at this matchup, we talked about it in the first segment. Tulane's defense has been fantastic this season at limiting explosive plays. UCF's offense is terrific at finding explosive plays. So it's going to come down to whichever team is better at doing that. But when you look a little deeper, they're both terrific red zone defenses. But if Tulane's had any kind of weakness defensively, when you look at it, when it comes to stopping mobile quarterbacks, they're still good against the run, but they're not quite as good. They are not an elite defense. They are just above average. So that's why I think John Reese Plumlee, if he's available to play, is going to be a huge difference maker in this one. So I'm taking UCF +1 and crossing my fingers that Plumlee can gut this one out and get on the field, because if he does, I think I've got tremendous value.
Yeah, it's no coincidence the one game that we have covered our mouths to talk about is the game that is point spread dancing around like a live wire on the ground right now. I am, by the slightest of margins, leaning with Tom here. I'd love to take the point. And aside from just the statistical breakdown, which we've done for the past 10 or 15 minutes, if you think about who's played who already, and you think about Central Florida, everyone goes back to the game against East Carolina, where they just got spanked on the road. But what I pay attention to is they've already played Cincy, and they beat them. And they played SMU, and they beat them. And those are the two teams that still lay in front of Tulane. They play them after this week. So I just wonder if battle-tested means anything to anyone here. I just wonder if it may be baked into the DNA of that Central Florida team a little bit more. So I am going to lean with Gus Malzahn. I do think we'll get Plumlee tomorrow, and I'm just going to roll the dice either way. I'm going to take Central Florida to win it outright. I'll take the point.
I'm going to take Central Florida to win it outright. I'll lay whatever it is at any given time. I think it's a field goal game at least for Central Florida for a lot of the same reasons you guys laid out. And I think it's interesting. Really, it's gone back and forth between who's favored and who's the underdog, but it really hasn't moved all that much, which tells me that no matter who it is, whether it's Mickey Keene or John Rice Plumlee taking the snaps, that it's not going to make a huge deal because both of these guys are good. And like you guys talked about, UCF is built for the explosive plays. Both of these guys can handle that responsibility. And like Josh, like you said, is Tulane really battle tested? UCF is. We've seen them succeed on that front. And granted, they lost a game. But, I mean, East Carolina's pretty good. So I'll take UCF. I'll lay the point. I'll take the point, whatever it is, at kickoff. I think it's a field goal game at least.
We got a UCF. We got a UCF. We got a UCF. And I'm taking Tulane. Come on. You don't have a whole week off to prepare for one of the biggest on-campus games that you have had in a long time. Do I think that the Green Wave, and Josh brings up a good point about the schedule, might they be caught in a reload the musket situation next week? Maybe. But this is the game of the year. Like, this is going to be the one that I do think they come out and they're very prepared for. And the other side of battle tested is that UCF has been playing with fire at times. The Cincinnati game was a little bit hairy. Memphis never really went away. And I just think that, the Knights, they have got the explosive offense, but it also can go a little bit cold at times. And if that Tulane defense that's so good at preventing the explosive plays, if it can create some frustration and build up the environment there, give me Tulane to win at home. And like we've all said, to cover whatever number. You're picking the winner, and I am picking the Green Wave. Our thanks to Josh Pate. Be sure to keep it at CBS Sports HQ for more coverage from New Orleans. And if you want betting picks from college football and all the sports world, then make sure that you are listening and watching The Early Edge from Sportsline. every single day at 10 a.m., plus live streams at night and the Early Edge in 5. Just scan the QR code or download wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.